The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Windsor Castle as Queen Camilla stepped gracefully from the grand entrance. Her emerald green dress fluttered gently in the cool October breeze, and her pearl necklace caught the light as she moved toward her beloved Bentley Continental GT. The car, a deep midnight blue with chrome accents, had been her constant companion for the past 3 years. More than just transportation, it represented her independence and the small freedoms she cherished despite the constraints of royal life. Detective Inspector James Morrison stood at attention near the castle gates, his uniform crisp and his expression serious. At 42, he had served the Royal Protection Unit for nearly 15 years, but today felt different. The sealed envelope in his breast pocket contained orders that made his stomach churn with unease. He had received the directive just 2 hours earlier from his superior, Chief Inspector Sarah Williams, who had delivered the news with an unusual gravity that suggested this was no routine matter. "Your Majesty," Morrison called out as Camilla approached her vehicle. His voice carried across the courtyard, causing several nearby staff members to pause their morning duties and look in his direction. The Queen turned, her eyebrows raised in mild curiosity. She had always maintained a cordial relationship with the security staff, often inquiring about their families and remembering personal details that touched their hearts. "Good morning, Inspector Morrison," Camilla replied with her characteristic warm smile. "I trust everything is well?" She reached for the door handle of her Bentley, keys already in hand. The morning light reflected off the polished surface of the car, creating an almost ethereal glow around the vehicle that would soon become the center of a scandal that would shake the very foundations of the monarchy. Morrison took a deep breath, his training warring with his personal respect for the Queen. "Ma'am, I'm afraid I have some rather unusual instructions this morning. I've been directed to conduct a routine security inspection of your vehicle." He paused, watching as confusion flickered across her face. "This will require me to temporarily confiscate the Bentley for thorough examination." The color drained from Camilla's face as she processed his words. Her fingers tightened around the car keys, and, for a moment, she seemed to shrink within herself. "I beg your pardon," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "On whose authority?" The question hung in the air like morning mist, heavy with implications neither of them fully understood yet. "Chief Inspector Williams, acting on behalf of the Metropolitan Police's Special Crimes Unit," Morrison replied, producing the official document from his pocket. The paper crackled as he unfolded it, the sound seeming unnaturally loud in the suddenly quiet courtyard. "I'm truly sorry, Your Majesty. This is as much a surprise to me as it is to you." Camilla's mind raced as she tried to comprehend what was happening. The Bentley had been a gift from Charles on their 5th wedding anniversary, purchased from the same dealership where they had once browsed cars during their courtship years. Every inch of the vehicle held memories precious to her heart. The leather seats had witnessed countless conversations with her husband about state matters and personal concerns. The glove compartment contained letters from her grandchildren, photographs from family gatherings, and small mementos from official visits that weren't meant for public consumption. "May I ask what this inspection is regarding?" she inquired, her royal training keeping her voice steady despite the turmoil building inside her chest. She noticed how Morrison avoided direct eye contact, a behavior that was entirely unlike the confident officer she had known for years. Morrison shifted uncomfortably, his polished boots scraping against the cobblestones. "Ma'am, I'm not at liberty to discuss the specific nature of the investigation. However, I can assure you that this is a precautionary measure, and we hope to have your vehicle returned to you as soon as possible." Even as he spoke the words, he could hear how hollow they sounded. Nothing about this situation felt routine or precautionary. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed across the courtyard as Lady Margaret Thornton, Camilla's private secretary, hurried toward them. Her usually impeccable appearance showed signs of haste, her gray hair slightly disheveled, her glasses askew. She had received an urgent call from the castle's security office moments earlier, informing her of the unfolding situation. "Your Majesty," Lady Margaret said breathlessly as she reached them, "I've just spoken with the Lord Chamberlain's office. They're requesting your immediate presence for an urgent consultation." She glanced nervously at Morrison, clearly uncomfortable with the inspector's presence during what should have been a private conversation. Camilla nodded slowly, her mind still struggling to process the morning's unexpected turn of events. She looked once more at her Bentley, its familiar silhouette now seeming somehow foreign and threatening. "Inspector Morrison, I trust this matter will be handled with the utmost discretion. The royal family's privacy is paramount." "Of course, Your Majesty," Morrison replied, accepting the keys as she reluctantly handed them over. The metal felt cold against his palm, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was crossing a line from which there might be no return. "The vehicle will be transported to our secure facility immediately, and only authorized personnel will have access." As Camilla walked away with Lady Margaret, their hushed conversation barely audible, Morrison called for the transport team. Within minutes, a specialized truck arrived, operated by technicians from the Metropolitan Police's Forensic Services Division. The lead technician, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, was a woman in her late 30s with sharp eyes and reputation for thoroughness that bordered on obsessive. "Quite the assignment," Dr. Rodriguez commented as she supervised the loading of the Bentley onto the transport vehicle. "Not every day we get to examine royal transportation." She had been briefed about the sensitivity of the case but remained puzzled about the specific concerns that had prompted such drastic action. Morrison watched as the midnight blue Bentley was secured with straps and protective coverings. "Elena, I need to stress how confidential this operation is. Whatever you find, whatever you don't find, it stays between us and the investigation team until further notice." His tone carried a weight that made the technician pause in her preparations. "Understood," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "Though I have to admit, I'm curious about what could possibly warrant this level of scrutiny. The Queen's vehicles undergo regular security checks, don't they?" She had worked on numerous high-profile cases during her career, but something about this assignment felt different, more personal, more dangerous. As the transport truck pulled away from Windsor Castle, Morrison remained in the courtyard, watching until it disappeared beyond the gates. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had just set in motion events that would change everything. The morning sun had risen higher, casting different shadows now, and the atmosphere around the castle seemed to have shifted in some indefinable way. Unknown to Morrison, inside the castle walls, urgent phone calls were being made. King Charles III had been informed of the confiscation while reviewing state papers in his private study. His reaction had been swift and intense, a mixture of concern for his wife and anger at what appeared to be an unprecedented breach of royal protocol. He immediately summoned his most trusted advisors, demanding explanations that none of them could provide. In London, Chief Inspector Williams sat in her office, staring at a collection of documents that had arrived on her desk just 24 hours earlier. The intelligence reports were marked with the highest classification levels, suggesting connections between organized crime syndicates and certain luxury vehicles. The information was vague but troubling, mentioning specific vehicle identification numbers and suggesting that some high-end cars were being used for purposes far removed from their intended transportation function. What made Williams' blood run cold was the realization that one of the vehicle identification numbers on the intelligence report matched Queen Camilla's Bentley Continental GT exactly. The coincidence seemed impossible, yet the documentation was authentic and the source credible. She had spent the entire night weighing her options, knowing that either action or inaction could have devastating consequences for her career and the monarchy itself. The Bentley arrived at the Metropolitan Police's secure examination facility in South London 2 hours later. The building, a nondescript warehouse from the outside, contained some of the most advanced forensic equipment in Europe. Dr. Rodriguez supervised as the vehicle was carefully unloaded and wheeled into Examination Bay 3, a sterile environment equipped with industrial lighting and specialized tools designed to uncover even the smallest pieces of evidence. "Let's start with the exterior," Dr. Rodriguez instructed her team of 4 technicians. "I want every inch photographed and documented before we proceed to the interior examination." She pulled on latex gloves and approached the Bentley with the reverence one might show a priceless artifact. In many ways, that's exactly what it was, a piece of royal history that might hold secrets none of them could imagine. The initial examination revealed nothing unusual. The exterior showed normal wear patterns consistent with regular use by a careful driver. The paint was immaculate, the chrome polished to perfection, and the tires showed even wear suggesting proper maintenance and rotation. Dr. Rodriguez began to wonder if this entire exercise was based on faulty intelligence or mistaken identity. It was when they moved to the interior that things began to get interesting. The leather seats, dashboard, and door panels all appeared normal, but Dr. Rodriguez's trained eye noticed something that made her pause. Near the base of the driver's seat, where the leather met the metal frame, there was a slight irregularity in the stitching pattern. It was so subtle that only someone with extensive experience in automotive forensics would have spotted it. "Marcus," she called to her senior technician, "bring the UV lights over here. I want to examine this area more closely." Marcus Chen, a quiet man in his 50s with decades of experience in forensic examination, wheeled over a cart containing various specialized lighting equipment. Under ultraviolet light, certain materials and substances become visible that are invisible to the naked eye. As the purple glow illuminated the interior of the Bentley, Dr. Rodriguez's breath caught in her throat. There, barely visible along the edge of the seat, was a series of small markings that had been completely invisible under normal lighting conditions. "Are you seeing this?" she asked Marcus, who was leaning in for a closer look. The markings appeared to be numbers and letters arranged in a specific sequence, a code of some kind that had been deliberately hidden from casual observation. Marcus nodded grimly. "Looks like someone wanted to mark this vehicle for identification purposes. The question is, who and why?" He began photographing the markings from multiple angles, ensuring that every detail was captured for later analysis. Dr. Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine as the implications began to sink in. Hidden markings in luxury vehicles were sometimes associated with high-level criminal activities, money laundering, drug trafficking, or worse. The fact that these markings were in Queen Camilla's personal vehicle suggested possibilities that seemed too shocking to contemplate. "Let's keep this between us for now," she whispered to Marcus. "Until we understand what we're dealing with, this information stays in this room." She knew that premature disclosure could cause irreparable damage to the monarchy and potentially compromise an ongoing investigation if one existed. As the afternoon wore on, the examination team continued their methodical work. They removed door panels, examined the trunk space, and used specialized equipment to scan for hidden compartments. With each passing hour, Dr. Rodriguez became more convinced that the Bentley contained secrets that someone had gone to great lengths to conceal. The breakthrough came when Marcus discovered that one of the rear door panels could be removed more easily than it should have been. The clips that normally held automotive panels in place had been modified, allowing for quick access to the space behind the panel. When they carefully removed it, they found themselves staring into a cavity that shouldn't have existed in a standard Bentley Continental GT. Inside the hidden space was a waterproof container, approximately the size of a large book. Dr. Rodriguez's hands trembled slightly as she photographed its position before carefully extracting it from its hiding place. The container was sealed with industrial-grade tape and marked with symbols that neither she nor Marcus recognized. "We need to call Chief Inspector Williams immediately," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice barely steady. "This is way beyond a routine vehicle inspection." She knew that whatever was inside that container would likely change the course of the investigation and possibly alter the future of the British monarchy forever. As evening approached, the examination facility buzzed with nervous energy. Additional security personnel had been called in, and the entire building was placed under lockdown. Dr. Rodriguez sat in her office, staring at the sealed container that now rested on her desk. She had been instructed to wait for Chief Inspector Williams to arrive before opening it, but the anticipation was almost unbearable. The sound of arriving vehicles outside indicated that the senior investigation team had reached the facility. Within minutes, Chief Inspector Williams entered the examination bay, accompanied by two officials whose presence surprised Dr. Rodriguez, representatives from MI5, Britain's Domestic Intelligence Service. "Dr. Rodriguez," Chief Inspector Williams said solemnly, "I need you to understand that what happens in this room tonight is classified at the highest level. The security of the realm may depend on our discretion." The weight of her words settled over everyone present like a heavy blanket. As they prepared to open the mysterious container, none of them could have imagined that its contents would reveal a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of British society, involving foreign agents, criminal syndicates, and a plot that threatened the very stability of the constitutional monarchy. Queen Camilla's Bentley had been more than just a luxury vehicle, it had been an unwitting participant in a game of international intrigue that would soon explode into the public consciousness with devastating consequences. The stage was set for revelations that would shake the British public's faith in their institutions and force everyone involved to confront uncomfortable truths about power, privilege, and the hidden dangers that lurk beneath the surface of even the most respected institutions. What had begun as a routine morning for Queen Camilla was about to become the first chapter in a story that would captivate and horrify the nation in equal measure. The silence in the examination bay was deafening as Chief Inspector Williams carefully cut through the industrial tape sealing the waterproof container. The MI5 agents, Agent Sarah Crawford and Agent David Hamilton, stood at either side of the table, their faces masks of professional composure that barely concealed their underlying tension. Dr. Rodriguez held her breath, her camera ready to document whatever secrets the container might reveal. As the lid came free, Williams lifted it slowly, revealing contents that made everyone in the room freeze in shock. Inside were dozens of photographs, documents written in multiple languages, and what appeared to be sophisticated communication devices that none of them had ever seen before. But it was the top photograph that caused Agent Crawford to audibly gasp, a clear image of Queen Camilla entering a building that intelligence services had been monitoring for months. "Dear God," Williams whispered, lifting the photograph with trembling hands. The image showed Camilla, unmistakably recognizable despite the casual clothing and sunglasses, walking through the entrance of a nondescript office building in central London. What made the photograph truly alarming was the timestamp. It had been taken just 3 weeks earlier, on a day when the Queen's official schedule showed her attending a charity luncheon in Bath. Agent Hamilton leaned forward, his trained eye scanning the other visible documents. "Those communication devices," he said grimly, "they're encrypted satellite phones. Military grade. The kind used by intelligence operatives and high-level criminal organizations." His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen similar equipment in contexts that rarely ended well. Dr. Rodriguez continued photographing each item as it was revealed, her scientific training helping her maintain composure despite the magnitude of what they were discovering. Among the documents were what appeared to be bank statements showing transactions in amounts that would have been staggering even for someone of royal means. Numbers like £47 million, €63 million, and $89 million appeared repeatedly across different accounts in various countries. "These financial records," Agent Crawford observed, studying the documents over Williams' shoulder, "they show a pattern of money movement that's consistent with large-scale money laundering operations. The timing corresponds with several international incidents we've been investigating." Her background in financial crimes made her particularly qualified to recognize the sophisticated nature of what they were uncovering. Williams found herself facing an impossible situation. The evidence before them suggested that Queen Camilla, one of the most visible members of the British royal family, might be involved in criminal activities that reached across international borders. Yet the possibility of a setup or elaborate frame job couldn't be ignored. Someone with the resources and motivation to place such damaging evidence in the Queen's vehicle would necessarily be operating at the highest levels of international crime or espionage. "We need to consider the possibility that Her Majesty is being targeted," Williams said carefully, voicing what everyone in the room was thinking. This could be an attempt to compromise the monarchy for political or criminal purposes. She lifted another photograph from the container, this one showing Camilla in what appeared to be a private meeting with a man whose face was partially obscured by shadows. Agent Hamilton activated his secure phone and stepped away from the group to make a call to MI5 headquarters. The conversation was brief but intense, conducted in the coded language that intelligence operatives used when discussing matters of national security. When he returned, his expression was even more grave than before. "My superiors want to know about the building in the first photograph," he reported. "It's been under surveillance as part of Operation Blackwater, an investigation into international arms trafficking. If Her Majesty was actually at that location, we have a significant problem." The weight of his words settled over the group like a storm cloud. Meanwhile, back at Windsor Castle, Queen Camilla sat in her private sitting room, staring out the window at the gardens where she had spent countless peaceful hours. The events of the morning had left her feeling violated and confused, but underneath those emotions was a growing sense of dread that she couldn't quite explain. Lady Margaret had been fielding calls from various palace officials all day, each more urgent and mysterious than the last. "Your Majesty," Lady Margaret said softly as she entered the room carrying a tea service, "the King has requested your presence in his study at your earliest convenience." Her normally composed demeanor showed cracks of worry that Camilla had rarely seen in her dedicated secretary. Camilla nodded absently, her mind still struggling to comprehend why her beloved Bentley had been confiscated. She had racked her memory trying to think of any reason why the police would be interested in her vehicle, but nothing came to mind. The car had been serviced regularly at the same dealership, driven only by herself and, occasionally by her personal protection officers, and stored securely when not in use. In his study, King Charles III paced behind his mahogany desk, his face etched with concern and barely controlled anger. He had been briefed by his private secretary about the morning's events, but the explanations he had received were frustratingly vague. When Camilla entered, he immediately moved to embrace her, sensing her distress. "My dear," he said softly, "I've been trying to understand what's happening. The Lord Chamberlain has been in contact with the Metropolitan Police, but they're being extraordinarily secretive about their reasons for taking your car." His voice carried the authority of decades in public service, but also the worry of a husband concerned for his wife's well-being. "Charles, I simply cannot fathom what this could be about," Camilla replied, accepting the comfort of his embrace. "The Bentley has never been anywhere unusual, never carried anything remotely suspicious. I'm beginning to wonder if this isn't some sort of terrible mistake." Even as she spoke, however, a nagging feeling in the back of her mind suggested that the situation was more complex than a simple error. Unknown to both of them, their conversation was being monitored by security devices that had been installed in the royal residences years earlier as part of standard protection protocols. The intelligence services had activated these systems following the discovery of the evidence in Camilla's vehicle, turning the palace itself into part of the investigation. Back at the examination facility, Dr. Rodriguez made a discovery that added another layer of complexity to the already bewildering case. While examining the sophisticated communication devices, she noticed that one of them showed recent activity. The device had been used to send and receive encrypted messages as recently as the previous evening, hours after Queen Camilla had retired for the night. "This changes everything," Agent Crawford said as she reviewed the device's activity log. "Either Her Majesty is far more technologically sophisticated than anyone realizes, or someone else has been using her vehicle to conduct communications without her knowledge." The implications of both possibilities were equally disturbing. Williams called for additional technical support, and, within an hour, 2 specialists from the government communications headquarters arrived to analyze the encrypted devices. Their preliminary findings suggested that the communications were part of a network that extended across multiple countries, with connections to known criminal organizations and, potentially hostile foreign governments. As night fell over London, the investigation team found themselves confronting evidence that painted an increasingly complex picture. The documents in the container included what appeared to be operational plans for activities that could threaten national security, financial records suggesting connections to international crime syndicates, and photographs that placed Queen Camilla in locations that raised serious questions about her activities. However, the more deeply they examined the evidence, the more suspicious its nature became. Agent Hamilton, with his years of experience in counterintelligence, began to notice inconsistencies that suggested sophisticated forgery or manipulation. The photographs, while seemingly genuine, showed subtle signs of digital alteration that would be undetectable to casual observation but evident to trained analysts. "Someone has gone to extraordinary lengths to create this evidence," he observed as he studied the documents under specialized lighting. "The level of sophistication suggests either a very well-funded criminal organization or a foreign intelligence service. In either case, we're dealing with adversaries who pose a significant threat to national security." The financial documents, upon closer examination, revealed another troubling aspect of the case. The bank accounts in question did exist, and the transactions were real, but they appeared to be connected to shell companies and offshore entities that were designed to obscure their true ownership. Someone with extensive knowledge of international finance and money laundering had created a paper trail that would be extremely difficult to trace or disprove. Dr. Rodriguez, meanwhile, had made progress in analyzing the hidden compartment where the evidence had been concealed. Her examination revealed that the modification to the vehicle had been done by someone with extensive knowledge of automotive engineering and sophisticated tools. The work was so precise that it would have been undetectable during routine maintenance or even thorough security inspections. Whoever did this, she reported to Williams, they had intimate knowledge of this specific vehicle model and access to specialized equipment. This wasn't the work of ordinary criminals or amateur operators. Her findings suggested that the conspiracy, whatever its ultimate purpose, involved individuals with access to resources and expertise that few organizations possessed. As the investigation continued through the night, additional evidence emerged that painted an even more disturbing picture. Among the documents were what appeared to be detailed intelligence reports on various members of the royal family, including personal schedules, security arrangements, and information that should have been classified at the highest levels of government. Agent Crawford, studying these documents with growing alarm, realized that the information could only have come from sources within the government or royal household itself. The level of detail about security protocols and personal activities suggested that the conspiracy had penetrated the very institutions responsible for protecting the monarchy. "We're not just looking at a criminal conspiracy," she informed Williams during a brief private consultation. "This appears to be a sophisticated intelligence operation designed to compromise the royal family and potentially destabilize the British government. The implications are staggering." Williams found herself confronting a scenario that seemed to belong in a spy novel rather than real life. The evidence suggested that foreign operatives, possibly working with domestic collaborators, had been conducting a long-term operation to gather intelligence on and potentially compromise Queen Camilla. The use of her personal vehicle as a storage and communication hub was both audacious and terrifyingly effective. As dawn approached, the investigation team had assembled a preliminary picture of what appeared to be one of the most serious security breaches in recent British history. The evidence pointed to a conspiracy that involved international criminal organizations, possible foreign intelligence services, and disturbing questions about the security of the monarchy itself. However, the most troubling aspect of the entire situation was the growing realization that Queen Camilla herself might be completely unaware of how her vehicle had been compromised. The sophistication of the operation suggested that she could have been an unwitting pawn in a larger game, her personal possessions turned against her by adversaries who had spent years planning and executing their scheme. The psychological impact on those involved in the investigation was becoming evident as well. Williams found herself questioning assumptions she had held about the security of British institutions, while the MI5 agents grappled with the implications of a breach that reached into the heart of the constitutional monarchy. Dr. Rodriguez, despite her scientific training and professional detachment, couldn't shake the feeling that she was documenting evidence that would change the course of British history. Each photograph, each document, each piece of technical evidence represented another thread in a web of conspiracy that seemed to grow more complex with every passing hour. As the sun rose over London, casting long shadows across the secure facility where Queen Camilla's Bentley sat surrounded by evidence of unimaginable complexity, the investigation team prepared for what they knew would be the most difficult phase of their work. They would need to determine not only what had happened, but why, and whether the Queen herself was a victim or, impossibly, somehow complicit in activities that threatened the very foundation of British society. The evidence before them suggested that the morning's confiscation of a royal vehicle had uncovered something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined, a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government and threatened to expose secrets that could shake the monarchy to its core. What had begun as a routine security matter was rapidly evolving into a crisis that would test the resilience of British institutions and force everyone involved to confront the possibility that nothing was as secure or trustworthy as they had believed. The morning briefing at MI5 headquarters in Thames House was unlike any that Director General Patricia Blackwood had conducted in her 23-year career. Seated around the mahogany conference table were representatives from every major security agency in Britain, along with senior officials from the Foreign Office and Cabinet Secretary's office. The gravity of the situation had elevated the investigation to the highest levels of government overnight. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blackwood began, her voice carrying the weight of sleepless deliberation, "what we discovered in Queen Camilla's vehicle represents a security breach of unprecedented magnitude. The evidence suggests a sophisticated, long-term intelligence operation targeting the royal family, but the implications extend far beyond personal privacy concerns." Agent Crawford presented the findings to the assembled officials, using a secure digital display to show selected photographs and documents while maintaining operational security. The room fell silent as she revealed the extent of the conspiracy that had been uncovered in the hidden compartment of the royal Bentley. The financial transactions alone suggest money laundering operations exceeding £200 million, Crawford reported. The communication devices contained encrypted messages referencing operations in 17 different countries, including several that are currently experiencing political instability that could affect British interests. Assistant Secretary James Pemberton from the Foreign Office leaned forward, his face pale with concern. "Agent Crawford, are you suggesting that Her Majesty the Queen has been unknowingly facilitating international criminal activities through her personal vehicle?" The question hung in the air like an accusation, despite being posed carefully. "That's one possibility," Crawford replied diplomatically. "However, our technical analysis indicates that the modifications to the vehicle were done without the knowledge of the royal household. The sophistication of the concealment suggests professional intelligence operatives rather than ordinary criminals." Meanwhile, at Windsor Castle, Queen Camilla was experiencing the most difficult morning of her royal life. She had spent the night unable to sleep, her mind racing with questions about why her beloved Bentley had been confiscated. The lack of information from official sources only heightened her anxiety, and she found herself second-guessing every recent interaction and activity. Lady Margaret knocked softly on the door of Camilla's private study, where the Queen sat surrounded by photo albums and personal documents, desperately searching for any clue that might explain the previous day's events. "Your Majesty, Inspector Morrison has requested an audience. He says it's regarding your vehicle and is quite urgent." Camilla looked up from a photograph of herself and Charles standing beside the Bentley on their wedding anniversary. The image, taken just 6 months earlier, showed them both smiling happily, completely unaware that their lives would soon be turned upside down by events beyond their control. "Please show him in," Camilla replied, straightening her posture and preparing herself for what she sensed would be an uncomfortable conversation. She had noticed increased security activity around the castle since yesterday, with unfamiliar faces among the protection officers and additional vehicles positioned at strategic points around the grounds. Inspector Morrison entered the study looking haggard and deeply troubled. His usual professional composure was cracked, revealing the emotional toll that the investigation was taking on everyone involved. He carried a briefcase that Camilla noticed was secured with multiple locks and bore official seals that she didn't recognize. "Your Majesty," Morrison began carefully, "I must inform you that the inspection of your vehicle has revealed evidence that requires us to ask some very serious questions. I want to emphasize that you are not under suspicion, but we need your cooperation to understand how certain materials came to be hidden in your Bentley." The blood drained from Camilla's face as the implications of his words sank in. "Hidden materials? Inspector, I have no idea what you're referring to. My car has never contained anything unusual, and I cannot imagine how anything could be hidden there without my knowledge." Morrison opened his briefcase and removed a tablet computer, its screen displaying selected photographs from the evidence found in the vehicle. He showed her images of the hidden compartment, the sophisticated communication devices, and some of the less sensitive documents, while carefully avoiding anything that might compromise the ongoing investigation. "These items were concealed behind a modified rear door panel," Morrison explained gently. "The modification was done with professional precision, making it virtually undetectable during normal use of the vehicle. We believe someone with extensive technical knowledge and access to your car installed this compartment without your awareness." Camilla stared at the images on the screen, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The communication devices looked like something from a spy film, and the sophisticated nature of the hidden compartment suggested a level of planning and resources that seemed incomprehensible in connection with her daily life. "Inspector, this is absolutely shocking," she said, her voice barely steady. "I had no knowledge of any modifications to my vehicle. The Bentley has been serviced exclusively at the authorized dealership, and it's stored securely when not in use. How could someone have done this without being detected?" Morrison's expression showed both sympathy and professional concern. "That's precisely what we're trying to determine, Your Majesty. The sophistication of the operation suggests that we're dealing with individuals who have extensive resources and possibly inside knowledge of royal security protocols." Back at Thames House, the investigation was expanding rapidly as new evidence emerged from analysis of the encrypted communications. Technical specialists had managed to decrypt several messages, revealing a network of contacts that extended across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. The scope of the conspiracy was becoming clearer with each decoded transmission. Agent Hamilton briefed Director General Blackwood on the latest findings during a secure video conference with senior officials. The communications reveal what appears to be a long-term intelligence gathering operation focused not just on the royal family, but on British government policy decisions and economic activities. Someone has been using the Queen's vehicle as a mobile command center for espionage activities. The implications were staggering. If hostile foreign intelligence services had been conducting operations using royal assets, it represented a security failure that could have far-reaching consequences for British national security. The potential for blackmail, manipulation, or worse was a nightmare scenario that kept senior officials awake at night. In Parliament, whispers of an extraordinary security situation had begun to circulate among senior ministers. The Prime Minister had been briefed confidentially about the situation, and emergency meetings were being scheduled to determine how to proceed without causing public panic or constitutional crisis. Dr. Rodriguez, meanwhile, had made another disturbing discovery during her continued examination of the Bentley. Hidden within the vehicle's sophisticated computer systems was monitoring software that had been recording the Queen's conversations, tracking her movements, and potentially transmitting this information to unknown recipients. "This is far worse than we initially thought," she reported to Chief Inspector Williams during an urgent phone call. "The entire vehicle has been turned into a surveillance platform. Every conversation Her Majesty had while in the car, every location she visited, every phone call made through the vehicle's hands-free system, it could all have been monitored and recorded." Williams felt sick as the full extent of the violation became clear. Queen Camilla's most private moments, her conversations with King Charles about state matters, her discussions with staff about personal and official business, all of it could have been compromised. The psychological impact on the royal family would be devastating once they learned the truth. At Windsor Castle, Camilla was grappling with feelings of violation and vulnerability that she had never experienced before. The knowledge that her personal vehicle had been compromised made her question every aspect of her recent activities. She found herself wondering if her private conversations with Charles had been overheard, if their personal moments had been invaded by unknown observers. "Lady Margaret," she said during their afternoon consultation, "I need you to review my schedule for the past 6 months. Every appointment, every journey, every event where I used the Bentley. If someone has been monitoring my activities, we need to understand the scope of what they might have learned." Lady Margaret nodded gravely, understanding the implications of what her employer was asking. The Queen's schedule included meetings with foreign dignitaries, private family gatherings, medical appointments, and countless other activities that could be politically or personally sensitive if exposed to hostile interests. As evening approached, Agent Crawford received intelligence that added another layer of complexity to the investigation. Surveillance footage from London showed that Queen Camilla's Bentley had been photographed at locations that didn't correspond to her official schedule on multiple occasions over the past year. Either Her Majesty has been making undocumented trips, Crawford reported to her superiors, or someone else has been using her vehicle without authorization. Given what we know about the sophisticated nature of this operation, the latter seems more likely. The possibility that criminals or foreign agents had been impersonating Queen Camilla or using her vehicle for unauthorized activities opened up terrifying new scenarios. If the